Hello and welcome back to ParanormalNL Podcast, located in Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada. That's PNL Podcast for short. I'm your host and founder, Jen Nosworthy. Thank you for tuning in to UPRN, United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and 105.3 FM on that Gulf. For tonight's Summer of Ghosts special on UPRN segment number 33, I've got two special guests tonight waiting backstage from New Jersey and New England, USA, who I'll bring on shortly. Now it's time to grab your favorite summer drink, a few summer snacks, and get ready for the show tonight. ParanormalNL Podcast is sponsored by the Bog Team. That's a boots on the ground Bog Team doing historical paranormal investigations in Newfoundland, Canada. PNL Podcast believes in supporting international paranormal networking and highlighting global paranormal people, places, and things. You can follow PNL Podcast and the Bog Team on their link tree, Paranormal NL Podcast. Now let's get on with the show. Tonight I have on with me, I have Mr. Steve Stockton, and I've got Sysco Murdoch. Welcome.
Hey, thanks, Jen.
Thanks for coming back. I say back because I think I had Sysco. You were on back when I was just doing radio back in season 2, episode 13.
Sure.
Before I was with you.
I think I was here at some point before too. I don't remember. It's before my son was born, and he's not quite 10 months old, so it's been a little while.
I came on your show. That was still back when I was doing radio, and when the Bog Team were just incepted not too long ago. That was back. That was 2023, I believe. But let's not talk about me. Let's talk about you guys. So do you want to start first, Sysco?
Well, shoot, yeah, I guess. Well, I have a little podcast called Journey Through the Gate, Paranormal Portal Podcast. I've been on radio. I've had that show on radio, on you name it, all over the place. Right now, it's currently on YouTube, the new channel Rumble, and on Facebook as well. With our group there, also the same name, Journey Through the Gate. And Steve and I got together years ago through a mutual friend on the radio, brought us together, and wrote a book together called We Are All Children in the Wilderness of the Afterlife, a guided tour through a haunted life. And we have a blast going through telling ghost stories, that whole thing, and experiences, and that's that.
Nice. Well, thanks for being back, Sysco. And Steve, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Steve Stockton, man of the world here. I'm currently living in Massachusetts. I've been here since 2023. Came here from New Mexico to get married, and my wife and I just had a son in September of 2024. Thank you, Holden Chandler Stockton. He's not quite 10 months old yet, but excited. I've got several Amazon bestsellers, National Park Mysteries and Disappearances, volumes 1, 2, and 3, My Strange World, which is autobiographical, and Strange Things in the Woods, the one that started it all off. And I've also got a radio show on Clyde Lewis Ground Zero Radio Network called Everything Out There. And I've got a few YouTube channels. The two biggest ones, Missing Persons and Mysteries, about 319,000 subs. And then Tales Untold, which is where I cover a little bit of everything. I think it's like 123,000. But YouTube's treating me good. Life's treating me good. Got the new wife, the new baby. Everything's good.
Everything is great. So are you going to introduce your baby into the world of paranormal?
Oh, yeah. He's already into strange things.
I imagine he's already...
I got into it from a young age, too, thanks to my maternal grandmother, so won't be much different for him.
Did you want to talk a little bit about how you got into it, Steve?
Well, I've been an experiencer since I was small. I remember my dad rocking me to sleep, giving me a bottle, so that's how young I was. And I could see little lights flying around the room that looked like the lights off a Christmas tree, but they were just zooming around. He couldn't see them. I was trying to grab him and laughing. He's like, "What are you doing?" And that was probably the first strange thing that I ever thought of. And then I saw my first apparition, full-body apparition, when I was about 5 years old.
Oh.
And my maternal grandmother, she was a self-professed gypsy witch, and from the Cades Cove area of East Tennessee near the Smoky Mountains there. And she knew every legend, superstition, ghost story, you name it. So I heard all that from a very young age, came by it honestly. But it was just part of my upbringing. That was my normal. The supernatural was my natural. I didn't know any different.
How about you, Sysco? Where did it all start out for you?
Well, similar yet different. My family was not into the genre at all. Probably if you got each one of them separate. I mean, when I was born into everybody was older. I had 7 older siblings, some of them steps, some of them, it was like the Brady Bunch. And my dad was a World War II vet and had, then they called it shell shock, but, different levels of that kind of thing. He was a bit of a drinker, big man, like 6, 7, 8, 9, some, I don't even know at this point, but I know he was very close to just under 7 foot tall.
And Sysco, I forgot to say thank you for your service again.
Oh, my pleasure. My absolute pleasure. Yeah. Happy birthday, Army. Hoorah.
Hoorah.
Hoorah. So, anyhow, yeah, that's really something. So that was the thing. And my dad was too, Army. Actually, we had the same MOS. We actually did the same job. That was wild. I found out later on, years after I got out. My sister sent me some papers and same dad. And, to find out that I went to the same base that he went to, Fort Dix, New Jersey, for his basic training. I went to the same AIT, and I was in the same company that he was in, and the same job. We were both truck drivers. So it was a trip to find out exactly after the fact. It just blew my mind. I kept looking at his DD-214 and just like, I can't believe what I'm looking at, just some weird things like that my whole life. But going back to first memories, there's like Steve, I didn't have that where everybody sat around and talked about it and explained it and told us about their experiences. You did not talk about it. And I got estranged from my entire family at a very young age as well. So now we're all splattered all over the place and sprinkled here and there, and nobody's talking about it. So I had kind of a quest on my own to try to see why I had been seeing stuff and experiencing things since I was young.
Yeah,
luckily my grandmother helped too a little bit. My grandmother helped a little bit.
Okay, well that's good. Yeah, because some families completely don't want to talk about it.
Right.
Shun it. Where I am from here is a small island, Newfoundland, and of course everybody knows everybody, and they're like, oh, I know her, and so you don't want to say much around. But tell us some of your stories, Steve. Do you have any family stories or anything?
Oh gosh, I've got a book or two full of them, but yeah, like I said, my maternal grandmother, that side of the family, they were part of the spiritualism movement from around the turn of the last century. So they regularly held seances, table tapping, table tipping, Ouija boards, things like that. Again, that was just the normal for them. They didn't know any better. My grandmother read cards, tea leaves, coffee grounds, animal entrails, you name it. She was into it. And working on a book about her, but that one's going to take some time and effort. Just she had 10 kids, 9 boys, and my mom was the only girl. And they've all passed on now except for one boy that's still alive, my Uncle Bill. He's almost 90. And I'm still trying to pin everything down. I mean, I remember a lot of those stories. But when I was born, my grandmother was present at the birth. And she says I was born with a veil over my face. That's what they call it down south. I was born in caul, and all that is still had the afterbirth stretched over my head, had to be cut away. Okay. But in her superstitious eyes, that marked me as a special child with second sight and all this stuff. I don't claim to have any powers, but she thought that I did. So anytime we go visit her, she lived about a half hour or so away on a dairy farm. They'd been dairy farmers. But lived in this big old Victorian farmhouse on top of a hill on what had once been their dairy farm. Anytime we went to visit, she would whisk me away into the quilting room. Her and my aunt would cut out quilt pieces all summer and fall, and then in the winter they would sit in what had once been a big formal dining room
Okay.
and piece quilts together. Well, that was verboten. The kids weren't allowed in there. There were sewing machines and scissors and seam cutters and all kinds of stuff. But she would whisk me in there and tell me some story, legend, ghost story, superstition. And if I could repeat it back to her, whatever she was trying to teach me, she'd reward me with a Hershey bar or sometimes a crisp new dollar bill. And back, late 60s, $1 bill, that was a lot of money for a kid. I could get a
Yes.
stack of comic books and a 10-cent icy. But
That
that
was
was,
a big incentive for you, right?
yeah, it was. And I wasn't supposed to talk about it to any of the other cousins because there was a lot of them. I mean, you imagine with 10 kids. And all those brothers, 9 brothers, I think they're all married at least twice, some of them more than that. I believe there was a few that maybe just married once, but had a lot of cousins. I wouldn't know some of my cousins today if they walked up to me on the street, but
So
I was the only one that was born with a veil over my face, so
interesting.
I was her special one. And Jen, she would know things. That was creepy. There was on the way to her house, there was another farmhouse that we had to drive by several miles away. It
right.
was up on a little hill.
Hmm.
Well, years and years prior, some kids were playing ball out in the yard, and one of them chased the ball out into the road, got hit by a car, and passed away. And that was always told to me as a cautionary tale. That's why you don't chase a ball out in the road. Well, one time we're on the way to her house. I'm laying in the back seat. This was the 60s. The seat belts, what's that?
Right.
I'm laying in the back seat reading a comic book, and I kind of felt this weird chill up the back of my neck. And I raised up, looked out the window. Sure enough, we're passing by that farmhouse. So I went back to my comic book, didn't say a word to my parents or anything to her when we got to her house. But she took me into the quilting room and was telling me some big tale or another. I don't even remember what it was. But she said, you feel things, don't you? And I said, well, yeah, I've got feelings you can hurt, or if you pinch me, I can feel it. And she said, no, I mean you feel things, like the way you felt that spot in the road on the way here tonight. And it was just, I'm like 7 years old or something. It scared the life out of me. I thought, she can read my mind. I got to be careful what I think. But it was just always something like that, just out of nowhere. No way that she could have known. I met a lady much later in life. I'll call her Anna, in her life anyway. And she had known of my grandmother when she was just a teenager in high school. Her and some other girls walked to my grandmother's house to get their fortune told. And Anna said, well, I'll go along with you, but I don't believe it in all that bunk.
Right.
That old lady's creepy. So they went to her house, knocked on the door. She goes to the door. Everybody called her Mama Bessie in the community. Said, Mama Bessie, yes, can I help you? She said, we're here to get our fortunes told. And she said, well, I can tell your fortune, and I can tell your fortune, but I won't tell your fortune, pointed at Anna, because you don't believe in me and you mocked me. And she said, you could have knocked me over with a feather. She said, we had to walk 2.5 miles or more to get to her house. I'd said that at the beginning of the journey. No way that she could have heard that, yet she knew somehow.
Yeah.
So just these little things like that, there was a whole lifetime of it for her. She passed away when I was about 14 years old, I think, and I wish I'd had at least another 14 years with her. And that was where I had my epiphany to do Strange Things in the Wood. I was looking at her in her final state there, and I thought, all those stories, all those legends, everything she filled my head full of when I was a kid, it's going to be buried right there with her. But I had this epiphany that I wasn't going to let that happen. I'm going to start writing these stories down. And I did. And years later, that's how Strange Things in the Woods came about. So, long story short. But
you did that, to get those memories out there.
Yeah.
And how did you guys end up writing your book together?
Sysco and I, we were on a radio show called Where'd the Road Go? With Soraya Askath. I can't think of the call letters, but it's in the same town where Cornell University is. And we were on with him. I think we'd been on separately. And he's like, there's somebody I want you guys to meet. And then Cisco. I don't remember who called who. I was living in Portland, Oregon at the time,
I don't even
and
remember
we had
now
about
either.
a 7-hour phone conversation. It was a synergy there. And that was just the first time we ever talked with each other. We've been on Soraya's show several times since then.
Okay. So yeah, so that's great that
And
you
I
were
kept
able
saying, you got to write a book, you got to write a book, you got to write a book.
to
And finally she said, okay, I'll do it, but I'm taking you with me. So
you're going
she
with me.
did the heavy lifting, but I did like the color commentary and stuff. It's great.
It, it's
She
cool the way it
didn't
turned out.
want to see what I
Yeah.
had written until after the whole thing was done. I'd read a chapter, write my thoughts on it, and then just sit on it. And then when we were completely finished, and everything was just so copacetic, it just firmly meshed together, and it made a wonderful, wonderful book.
It
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
did. Yeah, I'm looking at it right here because I grabbed it to see if there was, you spark your memory. Everybody always says that. There it is right there. That's me. And then you see everybody behind, that's the way it is. It's, they're there. Now, they all might not come up all at once, right, Steve? It's like what their time or, you lose some along the way, you pick some more up, you get to talk to some and some lose interest and go off about their business and whatever's next. And it's just a constant, not revolving door, but more like a big elevator or something full of just, coming in and out of your life, different groups of ghosts and different times of your life. And
Right. Yeah.
somebody said something today. I was listening to something. And Steve and I always laugh when we're listening to other people and they say crazy things about ghosts that we learned, 30 years ago isn't true. Like, well, this house can't be haunted. It's brand new. And we just laugh. That's like saying Oswald was the
It's
only
the
shooter.
land, not the house, right, Steve?
Yeah, I could take you to all kinds of places here in New England.
Oh, for
You
sure.
could build a new house there today, and it's like Stephen King wrote in Pet Cemetery, the ground is soured. And it is. There's been little conflicts, skirmishes,
Oh, yes.
Revolutionary War
Yep.
on back, even before that. And I don't think there's any place you can get to that hasn't had some incident on
Something.
it, especially here, places like this where you got a lot of history.
So how did
So
you
cool.
guys get together for Journey Through the Gate Paranormal Portal? How did y'all end up together doing
Well,
that
Steve,
podcast?
I told Steve into starting his first 13 past midnight because I said, just narrate your story, Steve. And it was a big hit. And then his voice got out there and he got on the missing person mysteries. And then he made that his own and it took off in wondrous ways. And then, meanwhile, I'm on the radio, I'm doing stuff. I got into it for totally different reasons, but, I had the book and then I wanted to interview people, pick their brains about ghosts. And, my quest is pretty much centered around that. Whereas and then secondary take in the Bigfoot, the cryptids, the UFO,
Right. Yeah.
the genre. But my, I don't even want to say specialty. My main interest is that. And what can we learn from them from the dead about living? And what can we, learn more about ghosts so we can help
I like
them,
what you told me
help us
about
understand.
jumper ghosts in the bar. Remember
What
you were
now? I didn't hear
remember
you.
you were talking about jumper ghosts in the
That's
bar.
one of my
Yeah,
favorite
the
chapters
jumper.
in the book.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. That's from A Shot of Tequila, No Salt. Jumpers, Grinners, and A Shot of Tequila, No Salt. That's that
And you can
chapter.
hear her narrate that on my 13 Past Midnight channel. I
There
forgot
you
about
go.
that one.
I'll tell you
Yeah.
that story. Though
Yes.
that's Jumpers is just something that I call them, and those are the ones that come in and have learned the ability. That's always something that fascinates me is, what ghosts have learned they can do. What's there, because they all don't do the same things. Now I look at it and go, are they capable of doing all those things? They only know they can do 2 or 3 of those, or one. Like why does one only bang on walls and open cabinet doors, where the other ones can make the living room burst into flames and have the dog fly around the dining room or something? What's the differential there? Is it the energy? Is it ability? Is it the knowledge? If you look at the movie Ghost, where Patrick Swayze was trying to go around
I
to
mentioned that.
to
Yeah.
kick a can,
Right.
or move a penny or to whatever.
Well,
So, it's like that. That's what interests me,
Well,
and
my theory is the energy, right, Steve? Because constantly when you do paranormal investigation, it'll tell you energy, I need energy. So I'll be like,
Yeah.
okay, we'll see that car over there. It's got a battery in it. Go suck all the juice out of that car's battery, not ours. And then come back and talk to us. And then bloop, it'll come back and be like,
Yeah,
full of
that happens. You know, all
energy.
your equipment, the batteries are drained and stuff. I've had that happen with cameras and stuff when I was in locations where there are things going on. Camera batteries,
Right.
uh, pocket
Mhm.
recorders, things like that.
Yeah, they
Just
can use all
they can
kinds
use
of
that
stuff.
energy. It's a stored energy,
Crystals.
and spirits are energy, I believe. So there you go.
Yes. Yeah. Water, crystals, anything. So, Steve, you've got a lot of stuff on the go. You've got the missing persons mysteries. You mentioned 13 Past Midnight, Tales Untold. Do you want to tell a little bit more about all your stuff?
Yeah, that started with 13 Past Midnight. That was my first YouTube channel, and that was thanks to Cisco. And we were talking one day, and I said, I want to start a YouTube channel, but I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And she's like, well, stupid, read your books. And I thought, it was brilliant. So I started out narrating stories from Strange Things in the Woods. I don't think I have a copy here. I'm waiting on some more to come in. I'm going to an author event here in New England in the fall. And I've
Okay.
got some more copies. The only thing I've got a couple floating around here is Strange Things in the Woods, or I'm sorry, My Strange World. This is autobiographical. Talk about my grandmother and stuff in here. But Strange Things in the Woods is a lot of the stories that I heard from friends and family and friends of family and things growing up from childhood on.
Steve,
And
do you have, out of all your books and everything that you wrote, do you have a favorite story?
oh gosh, that'd be like trying to pick, a favorite child or something. But
Or
well,
one that sticks out in your mind the most?
yeah.
It's the most strange.
Oh gosh, there's so many different ones. Like in My Strange World, I talk about my grandmother, my maternal grandmother. In National Park Mysteries and Disappearances of the Great Smoky Mountains edition, there's a standout story in there. Is probably, gosh, it's even hard to pick. Strange Things in the Woods. The Floating Coffin is a big one. The Crying Kittens. Kittens in the Crawl Space. Kittens have been a part of my life throughout all this. Something weird with cats and kittens is a
Okay.
recurring theme. But yeah, they're all my favorites, and I've got books of just stories too. I'm a storyteller, raconteur. But
Have you had a lot of pet ghosts?
not really as much as you would think. But I've got stories of them that I've collected like that. But
Interesting. Yep. How about you,
I've
Cisco?
experienced other people's. I went
You
over to a
just
guy's
asked me
house in
if
college
I got me
and
ghosty.
spent the night, and was in a spare bedroom. And sometime during the night, the lights are out and everything. I felt a cat jump up on the bed. It cuddled up next to my feet
Aw.
and was purring. And I thought, okay. Well, the next morning I got up. He's making breakfast. He's already up. And I said, Jim, if you were looking for your cat last night, it came in the spare room and spent the night with me. He kind of looked at me and he said, Steve, that cat's been dead for 3 years.
Oh
He
my
said, but
gosh.
he still comes back and visits. He said, I have felt the exact same thing. I hear the little collar. I feel him jump on the bed. He said, I've even seen an impression on the bed where he has been.
How
But
cute.
the cat didn't exist, but yet there it was.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. I've had some strange pet goings on too. Have you had some pet stuff go on, Cisco?
Pets? Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, so many stories of that. I think some of mine are also connected to understanding that anything can come back that you're connected to in love. So if it was a turtle or a pet bird or something else, they can also, it's the love connection. I think Steve and I over the decades have kind of settled on that theory. We're both comfortable there, right? If there's
Yeah.
a connection in love, that love energy is like the most powerful thing. So there's so
I agree.
many. As far as with pets, what I'm comfortable in understanding is they come back, they're fine. They don't take any time or, for lack of a better word, struggle to cross over like human beings do. They're not that connected and tethered to the earth, earthly plane, worldly things, that kind of stuff, materialistic. What they cross right over. They seem to go through some rejuvenation of, arthritic or a limp or, whatever sickness or whatever may have happened, and then come back because they care about us in death like they did in life. And that love connection is what brings them back and forth. And they seem to be able to go back and forth, like I said, with ease compared to humans that have so many hang-ups. Does that sound about right to you, Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people talk about the emotional aspect of it, and that's what brings them back to a certain area. Yeah.
If people just understood
I think
it
they
was
come back
energy,
just to let you know they're okay. If you're really, really worried
absolutely.
about them or something like that, they
Right,
can come back.
because
And
it comforts us. Because it comforts us, and that's what it's all. It's all about. It's like a quick one. Mario, my partner here, he had 2 cats, and we got together, and one of them he had a stroke in the night. He just happened to hit a toy that made a sound that got my attention. The whole thing was like crazy, but he used to sleep on, like Mario would sleep, almost like he would sleep in the crook of his legs that were bent. If he was like in the fetal position, that's where he would be, in that spot for years before I ever showed up. And when he and now he had a mini stroke before, and then he had a limp. So he would do, when he jumped on the bed, you could tell the 3-step, kind of a 3-step hop. You know how cats do. Yeah. So when he passed, it was about, I want to say it was second, third night, somewhere along the, I felt it, but he no longer had the 3-step hop. It was 1, 2, 3, 4. And I remember just looking over my shoulder in that direction, and I whispered out to him. I said, "Okay, you can come and stay the night, but I don't want you staying. He's going to be fine, and I'll get him through this. But you can come in and check on us anytime you want. I just don't want him stuck," because they had such a bond. And every once in a while, you can, he'll do his thing. He'll come up the way he came up on the bed. You can tell, because pets repeat what they did in life, whether it's a bowl or the nails down the hallway, the click clack click, or the jingle jangle jingle of the what do you call it, the collar, the license and all that kind of stuff, or whatever it was, something, they come back, they know how you'll recognize. So it might be a smell or a yip or something, a scratch at the door.
Noise or their toy or something. Yeah.
And you're not crazy. Accept that as a sign from the other side. We as human beings always want more, more, more. And that's why, things go, again, this is just, theory by Sysco. But, that's why, movies are like they are. I mean, think about it. Back in the day, not too long ago, you couldn't show an ankle. If you talked about like, whatever, everything was foreboding. You couldn't cuss, everything, since the censors anyway, let's put it that way. So 30s, right, Steve?
Yep.
Late 20s, 30s, right?
Something like that, yeah.
But look at how it's escalated, more, bigger. Back in the day, you couldn't, around the time like MASH was on, when I was in, middle school or whatever, you couldn't do so much. Now you can turn and watch zombies get their heads blown off, on 15 different channels any time of the day or night. So it's talking about escalate. Things escalate very quickly. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, for sure. And talking about stuff like that, I mean, off air, myself and Steve were mentioning missing person mysteries. Steve, did you want to talk about any of those?
Yeah, there's some cases in that are strange, that have a paranormal aspect to them, especially in some of the triangles, like here in the New England area. There's the Bennington Triangle. There's been a lot of strange disappearances in there that just don't make any sense. And I've had people ask me, some of these disappearances, I mean, some of them are just pure misadventure, being ill-prepared and overconfident. But then others, like I said, they have that supernatural, that paranormal element. And I've had people ask me about those. Is it Dogman? Is it Bigfoot? Is it UFOs? Is it something underground taking these people?
Yes.
Short answer, yes, all the above. The Fae theory, that's another one I've looked into. If you look at the Celtic countries where the Fae is almost a religion, or used to be, may still be, fairies come out of the woods and take people.
Well, Newfoundland is very Irish.
It's just, and it's funny because people that believe Bigfoot and UFOs, you mention the Fae folk, they'll laugh at you, but it's all connected, right, Sysco?
Yeah, it is, for sure.
Amen, brother.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing here in Newfoundland and Labrador, the Fae. And our Fae, of course, are not nice Fae. They're
Most
evil
of
and
them aren't.
spooky,
There are a couple
right?
of,
We always say,
of
"Oh, don't
types,
go out,"
but there's a
It's
whole hierarchy. I mean, you've got hairy giants. There's your Bigfoot. I read an account in I think it's the 1800s of some people who were in a Fey area, and they were visited by little men in a horseless carriage that came down from the sky. There's your UFO encounter. It's
yeah,
all connected.
yeah, interesting.
It's
Yeah,
all energy, that's for darn sure. And I'm always surprised at how many things are telepathic. So you've got telepathic UFO stories, abductions. Uh,
is it just me, or is that more on the rise lately? The
yeah,
telepathic
yeah,
stuff,
oh yeah, and
and
that
has
as
it got
well as
something
the
to
dogmen.
do with the corona of the sun? You think, Steve or
Oh gosh,
Cisco?
who knows? But the dogmen are telepathic. The Bigfoot. Back when I was a kid, I'm Native American mix. Of a Cherokee and Lenape. So my people were coming out of, gosh, my grandmother 1890. She was born in 1890. So her mom, imagine. So you got mid 1800s, right? So we're in Northeast in America,
Right?
and they had to hide who they were.
Yeah.
So they had to be very secretive. So you've got this whole dark shadows of anybody using herbs or trying to cure kids of, whether it's poison ivy or whooping cough. You're taking a chance in something happening. Well, you might get burned at a stake or dunked in the lake and see if you float or not, right, Steve?
Yeah.
So you had to be quiet. That was on the herbal side. You're a witch, so you're hiding that. Even though it's tradition in multiple cultures across the globe, herbs and teas and
No,
salves and
that's true.
poultices and you name it. And even the Catholic Church burns incense to cleanse things. I mean, come on now, let's be real. So now with the women in my side, on my mother's side, the matriarchal line, they had to stay very quiet in who they were, even though they were born in tradition. So my great grandmother's coming out of the year of the Carlisle schools and the, people, her seeing people she knew losing everything, see what I'm saying? So they pretended they were something different, immigrants from I forget where. And my grandmother, so she's growing up, she's still in that process of keeping everything quiet. So when I'm 6 and she's got me by the hand and she's taking me to the woods and she comes upon a sassafras tree, she stops. And even though there's nothing around us, she's looking all around to see. And then she reaches down and tells me that sassafras tea is one of the best things you can drink for a bad stomach or not. She's telling me, but she's whispering it like she's telling me where the treasure's buried. So I'm
Okay.
growing up in a place like that. And when they passed, my mom, I think, around my mom's generation, she was a little bit more forefront with it, but not as, not as much as like today, where, they were cool before being Native American was cool, right? See?
Yeah.
We had this burst, in the 70s and Billy Jack and, all those things get, kind of started bringing stuff out in, the 70s and stuff. But in AIM and, when they took Alcatraz and all that, it really brought a lot of, and I think it wasn't Marlon Brando. It came up and brought that one chick that wound up not being Native American at all.
Well,
But,
I
Yeah.
think it's less and less taboo,
yeah,
shall we say? So
yeah,
there's more people delving into the knowledge of the paranormal and the esoteric per se when it comes
sure,
to the herbs and things like
yeah.
that.
Well,
And it's
see,
not, it's not
the thing with
so
them trying to kind of trying to explain to where they were in their head, it kind of leads into a story. If you want me to tell, I'll tell you.
sure, yeah.
So knowing where their headspace was as far as keeping their culture quiet, I think it was real important around the time my mom was coming through, where after the war, World War II, I'm talking about, those kind of things are starting to come into it a little bit more. But everybody was still very hush hush about it, and it was still looked down upon. If I can, like in the 60s, like I said, in the 70s started busting up. So, like I said, my whole family was just estranged. My mom left my dad, and those who were old enough went in their direction, blah, blah, blah. So I went with my mom. For a brief time, we stayed with my grandmother, the one I just told you about with the sassafras tree and the tea, and her husband, my pop-pop, and my great-grandmother was there. So Steve was mentioned in the quilting squares and all that kind of stuff in the quilting room. My great grandmother would be downstairs in the cellar in the sewing room with an old Singer sewing machine, and I would go in there and talk to her. I'd grab an apple out of the root cellar or a pear or something that was down in that cool, air. And she would tell me stories, and she would tell me about being Native American, and she would teach me how to speak a little Lenape, and she would teach me how to plait hair. That's how she called it. And she would tell me different things, and different stuff about being in the woods. If you hear the woods go quiet, backtrack your steps, and respect things in the woods. Certain things you don't speak of. I don't want them to take you, and all this other stuff. Very Native American based, very grandmother to little granddaughter
That's great
advice.
that you,
And
she
keep it
was
alive.
able to teach all that to you, and you were,
Yeah, in a very short amount of time, honestly. And the cool part about it, the whole kicker on the whole thing, is now we shoot off to the next place, and I'm going to different schools, and everybody's still in different places. So we get together for a reunion, and it's about 18, 19 years in the future. And some of my elder siblings, surviving siblings, were there, and we start talking, and I'm there, and I'm back in New Jersey where this, where all of this took place after a long bout, in the Army and everything else. So we're all talking, and the house is gone. My grandmother's house is gone. They're all since passed and buried. And we started talking about the furniture and different things. I said, what happened to that Singer sewing machine? And that went with this or that. Well, that sparked a conversation about me spending a lot of time with great grandma, and really, enjoying how much she wanted me to understand and remember my culture and my bloodline and never forget. And she would tell me beautiful things like, why would a woman ever want to get a facelift, and remove every wrinkle, every smile, every tear you've ever, the pattern on your face. This is your map of your life, such a profound thing she would teach me. And all of a sudden, my sister jumps up and she slams the picture album closed that she was looking at, talking to my other sister on the couch, reminiscing. And she said, that's it. I've had enough. That's it. How old were you? I said, 6 years old. I was going to kindergarten. The bus used to drop me out up front. She goes, and you were at grandma's house? I said, yes. And she said, the little gray house? I said, yes. In the cellar, in the sewing room, and yada, yada, the Singer sewing machine. And she said, that's it. You're lying. Grandma never talked to you. I said, what are you talking about? Hold on. Wait a minute. She said, because here's the thing. Grandma used to sew down in on that Singer sewing machine in the sewing room. But one day she was carrying some cannon down the steps, and she fell and she broke her hip. She went to the hospital, and then she went into recovery. And while she was in recovery, she had passed with complications. She said, you were 3 years old. I carried you on my hip at the funeral. You never spoke to great grandma in the cellar. And I said, oh, yes, I did, honey. Oh, yes, I did. There's your ghost story.
There you go. Yeah. So you saw your grandmother. So
yes, I think it was important, so important for her to come back, and she picked the one. Everybody was so mad and so jealous. And again, you got to take this if you have abilities, if you have sensitivities, if certain family member or pet comes back to say hello to you, other people are going to be jealous. Like, why not me? Well, that attitude right there is what stopped them from coming through. The attitude you just heard is what stops them from coming through. They're going to pick the one that's going to listen. And she told me about my heritage, and she said, never forget. And she picked the one that was going to talk about it. So,
or some people may have an experience, Sysco, and don't realize that it is paranormal, right, Steve? Do you have any other scripted
things like that? It's just
stories?
Didn't know it was paranormal until much later, and that happened, and that wasn't supposed to. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, that's just 20 years later, Stephen. How crazy is that? The rest of that whole story is actually, I hate to be the one that's in the book, but if you're interested in how that whole thing came down, it really is a good chapter. The other good chapter in there is the biker. Why don't you tell her about the biker, Steve? Steve started having these nightmares. And this
I kept having these recurring dreams.
Now, this is the book you were talking about, the We Are the Children book, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, that's this one right here.
Yeah, I kept having these dreams, very disturbing dreams, of I was walking along a place, I could see stuff off in the distance, and it was the same place every time. Well, off over the bank, toward the river, there was a motorcycle half buried in the mud, and I thought, that's not good. And I'd walk on up, and then little bit past there, I found that there was a body under a cedar tree, and the tree was hanging down. The boughs were hanging down low enough that I couldn't see anything other than his feet and his legs. But I kept having these recurring dreams, and I could see the motorcycle. I couldn't see a plate or anything on it, but I could describe the area and the color of the motorcycle. And I called Cisco one time, and I said, I think I know where there's a body, and I want you to help me find it.
I love that I have friends that do that and call me and say things like that to me.
Yeah,
But
not help me hide a body. It was help me find a body. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. For your listeners, this is going to be one of the most amazing ghost stories you've ever heard. And what it entails is, 3 to 5 complete strangers helping a ghost and helping him cross over. Also, energy connection. This teaches so much. So go ahead. I'll shut up and
Yeah, and it just the dreams got a little worse and a little worse, and I could see the body was starting to deteriorate. The clothing that it was wearing, the jeans and the vest and things like that, the biker vest that it was wearing was starting to wear through, and the body was talking to me. I couldn't see its face, but it was telling me, you got to help me. You got to get me out of here. And I thought we just need to help him be found. But it was much, much more than that once I got Cisco involved. And Cisco, I'll let you help me out here. There was somebody that you called, and you didn't even mention what it was.
The phone call. You called me and literally said to me in the wee hours, I need you to help me find a body. And I'm like, Steve, I'm there for you, man. But, with just the facts, don't say too much, and I was just kind of like that conversation. And he goes, no, let me explain. And I'm like, please do. So he starts telling me he's having these dreams. Now, the way to understand and take this in is this isn't one dream. This isn't two dreams. This is multiple dreams. Some of them separated by days, and then it got more rapid, I believe, toward the end there. But, correct me if I'm wrong. But the thing was, it wasn't just one dream. And I think Steve was focusing on this motorcycle, and he thought, this motorcycle, this guy's had an accident. He's crawled up underneath a tree, and he's trying to contact me or jump into my dreams and affect my dreams. So I'll go find the body. Right. But as it grew, it was kind of like you had described to me, Steve, American Werewolf in London. If you've ever seen that movie, where every time he showed up, it was more deteriorated.
Worse and worse and worse.
It was his face was disappearing, and Steve took that as a rapid sense of urgency growing as this went along. So somewhere along here, he was still kind of held together. He was still leaning up against the tree, and you had just crawled underneath the bough, I think, and saw his skeletal face, and that was like it. Scared the pants right off you. You called me. I think I know where her body is, or I need you to help me find a body. One of those things, and we jumped in. Now, what we did was, we were focusing on this motorcycle. So it was like orange and cream trim or some kind of mess like that. I kept thinking creamsicle. We're looking at this in the background. I'm talking to Steve, and this is like, look, we're two old fogies. You're trying to use Google Earth. He says there's a smokestack in the back, an old school, an old factory of remnants, of ruins,
the brick buildings and things. Yeah, I could see everything there. And it's all the same every time.
And we're losing our
minds for 3 solid days. We are losing our minds searching for dirt and the kind of dirt it was. Meanwhile, he's having these dreams or visions and things.
Right.
So I that weekend, I think at the end of the 3rd day, maybe the 4th day, I was going to a psychic fair with a friend of mine that was setting up and had a little booth for, I don't know what it was, psychic teddy bears or something. I don't know. Right. So I go and I said, look, Steve, this is what I need from you. I said, I need to talk to this guy. And this guy, I tried to get into his head to talk to this guy that was jumping in the dream. Let's just call him Cool Breeze, because that's what we called him eventually. So I wanted to talk to Cool Breeze. He would not talk to me because I'm a woman. We had a little issue. So that's why he connected Steve, a man, and for some other reason connected into your energy, Steve. We never did figure it out, but it's okay now. We don't need to know. So
what did you find him?
I said, Steve, what I need from you, he won't talk to me. He's connected to you. So when he's connected to you or right after or whatever, I need you to give me permission to carry your energy. This is a true story, folks. Carry your energy, your permission because I'm going to see somebody at the fair tomorrow. I'll know her when I see her. And I said, and I'm going to get her intake on this, her 2 cents, whatever, her 2 psychic cents. So Steve said, absolutely, done deal. So we did this. I show up, and it's a friend of mine, and I sat down, and I kind of walked around the table to see where I was supposed to go, and I just sat in the chair because I know these people, and it's okay, trust me. So I sit down, she's, Sysco, how you doing, baby? How you doing? Hadn't seen you in a while, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And then all of a sudden she starts slowing down. She looks at me, she goes, you're not here for you, are you? And I'm like, nope. And I won't say anything. This is what we do to each other when, and I'm not saying anything. I'm just shaking my head, nope. That's about all I said is nope, yep, nope. And she says, hold on, I'm getting it, slow down. Ooh, this is going to be, and I'm like, yep. She's like, she's just a beautiful girl too. I mean, big, beautiful eyes. So I'm looking at her, and I can watch her slowly connect it in. She goes, oh, and she just looks at me. She goes, well, first off, she goes, stop looking for the motorcycle. Knock me about.
Oh,
knock me off my damn chair. And I just smiled at her, and I said, keep going, honey. And so she's talking, she goes, well, it's deeper. And she just told me what she told me. So basically, fast forwarding between her and I, and then going back and talking to Steve, we had devolved what we were going to have to do, since he would not talk to us. We were female. And the other help that wound up being called, there was 2 more that were helping as well. One was in Washington State, and then there was another out in Hawaii.
Yeah.
So we had all, it took a whole room. Trust me, it took a village. So we all decided to go in agreement. We did a little stuff with our spirit guides and everything. And we did a little reading and found out that what was going on. Steve, jump in here and talk about his mom.
Yeah, he'd been part of a motorcycle club, let's say,
okay,
kind of an illustrious thing there. And he had done some things that he wasn't very proud of. And I don't think he even knew for sure that his mom had passed. But that was why he had the issue with women. He had done some things that he knew his mama wouldn't approve of.
Right.
And that was the big thing that was worrying him, that he had had an accident and died out here under this tree. He crawled up under there and expired. And he didn't want to bring shame or anything on his mother.
Regret was so strong, but for some reason it was just so wild that it tacked into Steve. It was like, how did they connect? Did Steve walk by? Did Steve at one point, maybe a 5th cousin twice removed in a
Still have no idea where it was, but
we don't know. But there it is.
Okay.
So it could have been, and I still suspect that his spirit guides got with, his people got with Steve's people.
My people called his people or something like that.
So you connected with him somehow, but did he ever show you in the dreams where he was at? I know it was under a tree and everything, but did you ever figure out?
Not the actual physical location, but the lady that Sysco talked to said just stop looking for it, because the motorcycle where the shale dirt was washing off the bank there, every time I'd look at it, it'd be a little bit more covered up, and by the end of the dreams, just the handlebars were sticking up in a little bit of the headlight. So wherever it is, it's under the dirt now.
It's gone. And it doesn't matter, because what happened was Steve had to go every time. Again, he wouldn't talk to us. So we would have to get together, decide what was the next thing to have to do, because we had to walk him through his regret. We had to walk him through the things he had done without physically having to retrace every step. So basically that was Steve's thing, where Steve was like, look, buddy, we're just going to jump to the chase here. Steve, you got to go in there and just tell him, this is what we're going to do. You're going to have to take that step, and be, go across, take that step and learn to forgive for yourself. And don't worry about, what other people are thinking. Basically, that was what Steve was doing. Meanwhile, we're on the other side trying to connect, trying to take some of that off of him so Steve can get a word in, you know what I'm saying, to this guy where he's listening, because he wouldn't even look at you once he stood up. Did he, Steve? He
wanted to, once he came out from under the tree, he would stay behind me, and I couldn't turn around and look at him.
Well, you probably didn't want to scare you, right? With
Probably.
No, he didn't want to face anybody. He didn't want to face anybody, Jen. He was so.
Yeah,
We don't
yeah,
know
that
what
too.
he did, but it was massive. It was massive because it was so heavy. It was so dark and so heavy. Still, these people have to walk across, and then it starts coming off, right, Steve? Layer by layer. That's their journey. That's what they got to go through. But it's still, we've seen dark go in and come out right, haven't we, Steve? So
Yeah.
we all get together. We pick a time. We synchronize watches, basically, and all of us are working with our energy and with Steve's, and we tell Steve, look, right before you go to sleep, this is the attitude we want you to take when you go in there. While Steve's sleeping, we're getting together, and I said, that's it. He's stubborn. I'm done with this. We're going to go get his mother. We call her over. We get our spirit guides to go over to get her. She's coming to the light, to the light. We see what we see all together in our own states where we are. We see her coming to the light and reaching out. Steve has no idea we're doing this, Jen. Okay. Steve next morning wakes up and tells me he had a dream. Tell her the dream, Steve. Had no
Yeah,
idea we were doing
basically,
this.
I thought, and he thought his mother would probably grab him by the ear or something to drag him away, but she came and took him by the arm. Mother's love reached out from beyond the grave and guided him into the light. So
Like you said earlier,
he's at
Steve, it's
peace
all
now.
connected, right?
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
all connected.
the lady who Sysco went to, she knew
The
immediately.
power of energy.
Yeah.
The power of energy, the power of love, the power of forgiveness, forgiving yourself. Whether other people do or not, it doesn't mean you have to forget. It doesn't mean you have to forget the lesson. Maybe you need to go through a little regret. Maybe you need to understand the pain you caused. Maybe you need to get, that's not for me to say, but I've seen it time and time again. Steve has seen it time and time again. Love is eternal. Love is the answer. And mostly the dead is coming back here to let us know to live our lives, be the best human beings we can be. And love never dies, and neither do we. We just change forms, and some
That's
of us are a little more stubborn than others about getting it done.
Well, it's all about the energy, right? I mean, if we, like she said, we start as stars and we end as stars, So I think it's all interconnected, definitely 100%. So you guys want to talk a little bit about where fans can find you and where to find your work and things like that?
Oh, sure. I'm on YouTube, Missing Person and Mysteries with Steve Stockton, and Tales Untold and 13 Past Midnight. That's more seasonal now, 13 Past Midnight. All my books, I think there's 21 or 22 up there now on Amazon. Several of them have been international bestsellers. I'm on Ground Zero Radio Network with Clyde Lewis. I have a show called Everything Out there. And I've got more stuff in the works. Got at least 3 books going on right now. More videos coming up on the channels. It's what I do.
You got a lot of books out there, Steve. You started a while ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for writing all those books and getting all that paranormal stuff out there.
Yeah. And Sysco was that helped with that too, the impetus for me to write. And helped me get going.
Sysco, do you want to talk about where fans can find you and your socials?
Yeah, writing this book with Steve was great. It's a good book, but here's the thing. If you're going to write a book about the experiences you've had, well, you only have so many, So I started as a child. It really is like a journey through, but there's so much more, and there's so many other things, that have happened in and around, But basically, this book is, if you're trying to match up an experience you had or understand an ability you have, or to understand how a house may become haunted, and maybe not to the family it moves in after, how could that happen? Why are some ghosts visiting, certain people and not others, and things like that. It really helps understand a lot, but I think it's also important to be able to look at an experience you had in multiple different ways and vantage points too, because I've learned so much just talking to Steve. And he said, well, how about looking at it like this? What if the boy coming in the window is really me, and it's just an implant, or those kind of things, and not a ghost, or, so just looking at things differently, why those footsteps you hear coming down the stairs, maybe you from Tuesday carrying down the laundry, stuff like that. Just looking at stuff different and trying to understand and to be
Stuff like
more
that happens
be
too.
kind
I had a
of.
story
Yeah.
briefly here
Like a
where a
time
guy
slip?
went back to visit his childhood home, and the guy that lived in it said, "Did anything strange ever happen when you were here?" And the guy said, "No, not really." He said, "There's a little guy I see in here about 4 or 5 years old. I see him running down the back hallway into the bedroom, and then he's not there." And he kept telling about him, describing it in more and more detail. The guy said, "I want to show you something." He went back to his current home, got some photos, brought them back, and showed the guy. And he said, "That's him. That's the little boy I see here. Who is that?" And he said, "Mister, that's me when I was
love
4
that
years
story.
old."
Oh
He
my
was
God, that's
somehow, he
cool.
was connected. He was traumatic for him when they moved there at a young age,
imprint.
but he was somehow still connected to that place as a child, even though he was an adult. His childhood self was still there, running around in his childhood home. That's one of
Wow.
the strangest, but
That's cool.
poignant, most poignant, heartwarming stories I've heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's great, and I think that that's a perfect example of, not to try to shove a bunch in here, but this goes perfect with um, the perfect example of the same thing can happen and be full of light and kind of happiness and warmth, and the same type of haunting, if you can call it that, or imprint or residual haunt, of energy. Isn't that really what a residual haunt is? So you've got that, and then I've got one where a person moves into a house relatively new, had no idea anything had happened in the house before, going down the hallway, night, different times, maybe 2, 3, 4 times a month, something. She'd see what she thought was a woman getting towels out of the linen closet, and then it got even worse. She was seeing different way, it'd be very sporadic. And then she started to see it where it actually told a story. She's coming in with the linen basket. Everything was in order. Up. And then she started paying attention to it, I guess, giving it energy. And one day she sees the whole thing play out. And a guy comes through the door after she's putting away the laundry and chokes her and kills her. And she dies there in the hall. Now, the two things she saw, the woman was dead. The man was alive. Yet she saw him in the hall, so could be mistaken for a ghost. So again, that's just another cautionary tale. You don't know what you're looking at, but you're not crazy for seeing it, right, Steve?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You never know what you're looking at. It's not
Yep,
that
that's
easy.
absolutely right. Your mileage may vary, as I like to say.
It's not
Right,
that
yeah.
easy, man.
Yeah,
It's not that
definitely
cut
a lot
and
of
dry.
residual with emotional
Yeah.
energy. That's for sure. Do you want to give a
Expand your
shout out
thinking.
to your fans, Steve or Sysco?
Absolutely. Hey, everybody out there on my gatekeepers and journey through the gate. Listen, catch us on our new channel, our new Rumble channel. You'll see the symbol for Journey Through the Gate, but it's only under Sysco, Sysco. Get in there and follow us. It's totally free if you don't have Rumble, because they let us watch movies on Tuesday night. We're watching a paranormal series of movies, whether it's ghosts and werewolves. I think we're into Summer of Vampires now. We had a blast the other night, watching, what the heck was it? Night Flyer. Man, that's a good one. Stephen King's The Night Flyer, where the vampire's got his own Piper cub and he just goes through and eats and flies off. It's crazy,
Well,
crazy.
this
But
episode
we
is
have a good time. So come on over and join us, and Journey Through the Gate on YouTube and Facebook. Love to hear from you. Get the book on Amazon. It is in ebook and paperback, so you can order it that way. And Steve's books are there as well.
Yep. This episode is going to come out live with a live chat and a watch party, so your fans can join in and watch. And if you're available, you can chat with them and give them some or put some bacon in the comments. I know that's a popular thing for y'all, right?
Yeah.
So if you see that in the
And
comments,
everybody on Missing Persons and Mysteries and Tales Untold, come on over and join us here for this.
Everybody's welcome. Come on in, hear some good ghost stories. Listen,
And I want to say hi to my wife, Nicole, and my little boy, Holden. I've got his picture down there if you want to share it.
Hey, Nick. Hey, Holden.
There he is. He just turned 9 months old on.
Congratulations. A little cutie patootie.
There we go.
Well, thanks so much.
He just turned 9 months old
All right, y'all.
Yes, congratulations. Thanks so
Thank you,
much,
thank you.
y'all, for being on the show tonight. And I hope you all have a great summer with lots
You
of
too.
extra ghosts in it. We're going
Hello
to
out
leave you
there to
now.
everybody in Newfoundland.
Yes, hello from Newfoundland and Labrador. We're
Newfoundland.
going to leave you with some Bog Team music from
Good night,
Robert
Steve. Love you.
Dumont.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Joe.
Spirits of the unknown roots on the ground beat.